After over a year of waiting and waiting and waiting for answers, we finally have a little bit of an update on Model S and X deliveries for Europe. So we haven't talked about this launch in a long time because unfortunately there's just been very little to talk about. Very little Elon has mentioned, but I still see absolutely a ton of comments asking about this, which is why I was excited to talk about it in today's video. It's been spotted on Twitter that now the Model S and X in Europe have been updated to showcase an estimated delivery between December and February of next year. So fingers crossed if that delivery date thing is accurate, which it often isn't, but I guess there's a greater than 0% chance now that first deliveries could begin by the end of this year. This is an incredibly long wait time if you consider that Tesla basically stopped manufacturing the old Raven Model S and X at the end of 2020. Not 2021, but the end of 2020 is when they stopped producing those vehicles to update them with the new plaid powertrains, the updated interiors, the steering yoke. And it should be mentioned that these vehicles with tremendously long backlogs and insanely high prices, I don't think I've ever seen the Model S and X start as high as they are today, and yet they still have a huge wait time, and despite that huge wait time was not taking into consideration that many foreign markets. I think they just started delivering some in China, but for the most part, all of those Model S's and X's were essentially for the North American market, and basically everyone in Europe that's wanted a higher end Tesla has had to wait. And they've essentially been waiting for over 2 years, and I relate a lot to you guys with how frustrating it is when you have a car in mind and you're ready to pay for the car and you've got the money for it and everything, but you just can't buy it yet because the manufacturer doesn't want to give it to you. I'm in that exact same situation right now, so I can only imagine how you guys feel who have had to wait much longer than I have. Plus, you probably had a lot more money than I do if you're in the market for a Model S and X, which if you've got that kind of money, you have even less reasons to wait for things and have to be more patient in terms of saving up for your dream car and stuff. But the wait does actually come with a bit of a bonus because on the configurator now, people have spotted that the Model S is now offering an optional tow hitch, which you can't select in the configurator, but they're saying it's going to be supported like with aftermarket accessories. But it should be rated up to 1,600 kilograms, which is pretty awesome. That translates to around 3,500 pounds, and that's an option we don't have here in the United States. I don't know why Europe gets the tow hitch option on the Model S. They don't even have aftermarket accessories for the tow hitch Model S in the United States. So the wait did come with a bit of a perk, but so far all of those estimated delivery windows of December to February are only showing in countries in Europe that are left-hand drive. So unfortunately, if you're in a country that's right-hand drive, you're probably gonna have to wait a little bit longer. I know this is killer, but it says a lot about how much demand there is for these vehicles, which are easy to forget about when all we talk about is Giga Texas and Giga Berlin and Shanghai, everybody ramping up the Model Y, and yeah, still occasionally ramping up the Model 3, but these vehicles, which are big chapters in Tesla's history, I still think are serving the original purpose. They're intentionally designed to be high-margin vehicles that allow Tesla to achieve higher gross margins, and that allows them to invest more money towards EV development, ramping up factories, securing nickel supply deals like they just did with Indonesia. $5 billion worth of nickel. Tesla can sign those big contracts because they are a profitable company and they sell vehicles with such high margin, and while the Model S and X are not the majority of their vehicle deliveries, they probably account for a disproportional amount of revenue generated and profit generated for these vehicles. So as big of a headache as it was for Tesla to shut down the Model S and X lines for so long, even so that Elon mentioned on Twitter it was kind of dumb for them to refresh the Model X because of how much orders they still had waiting on their cars, and when they shut down that slowed down the production process and everything. But despite all of the headaches, they have created vehicles that are insanely high in demand so that Tesla can capture not just the, $50,000 to $70,000 car market, but they actually are dominating in the six-figure vehicle market. There's very few other vehicles that are in the same price range of the Model S and X that are selling at the volume that they are. So that showcases that Tesla has definitely a lot of brand power, that demographics that have more money to burn on their vehicle are willing to go with a Tesla because they know it's going to have the software and it's going to have the acceleration and the charging access that they're interested in. Even though there's a lot of people that would say that the Model S and X interiors are not quite as luxurious as a Lucid Air or not quite as luxurious as a Mercedes EQS. And they may be right about certain materials or certain interior features, whether it be massaging seats or fragrances that come out of the HVAC system. Doesn't change the fact that if people are spending that kind of money on a car, it's becoming very, very common for for them to go with a Tesla. And I genuinely think that because of how high the margins are on these vehicles, if in the future they ever had a demand problem due to, I don't like the yoke, or I don't like the lack of gear stocks, or the Model S is too dated of a design. We know not everybody out there chooses this car, but in the future, I think they could comfortably lower prices a lot and increase production, probably over 100,000 vehicles a year. I know they've said that that's their target run rate for the Model S and X, is when they're fully ramped to be delivering around 100, maybe 110,000 per year, but I think this is in the dream car department for enough people, and probably a lot of kids that can't afford it now that might become successful and work really hard and be able to afford it in the future, that are still gonna choose those vehicles just because they love the Falcon Wing doors, or they love the insane acceleration of the Plaid. Supercar performance for a fraction of the price, and of course Europe is no exception to that. It's a very competitive EV market, and Tesla has basically stopped all Model S and X deliveries for several years now, and I don't think enough people were talking about that. So I'm glad there's a light at the end of the tunnel for all of the richer demographics out there that are waiting on their cars. The wait hopefully shouldn't be too much longer, and the popularity of these refreshed Model S's and X's I also think is completely underestimated. People are like, well, that's a $100,000 car, we don't need to spend time talking about that, and yet that $100,000 Model S actually was outselling Ford's best-selling EV, the Mach-E, as well as every other EV in the United States lately. So if you think we should talk more about startups or more affordable EVs on the market, it should be worth mentioning that the Model S and X are still outselling those far more affordable vehicles, which says a lot about how production capacity matters a lot more right now than product affordability and desirability. And once you start understanding that production capacity is everything, that's when you'll start to understand Tesla and the EV market as a whole much, much better. But hey, thanks to everyone on Patreon supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.